What's going on, fellow A-plussers? It is I, your host as always, Adam Perez. We're back once again as we're continuing along with our Obi-Wan Kenobi reviews as we're set to go ahead and get into episode number 3 for you guys today, or I should say, should certainly say part 3, to say the least. As we're doing something a little bit different, decided to go ahead and start doing live reviews for Obi-Wan Kenobi for you guys. You can definitely expect these every Thursday live at 1 p.m. Central Time. Since they did drop the first 2 episodes last week, I went ahead and decided to actually go ahead and just pre-record those and drop those for you guys last week. But since we are back to just the 1 episode a week, I figured why not go ahead and start going live for you guys. We only got 3 episodes left. I believe this is only 6 episode series, if I'm not mistaken, limited series. So as of right now, there's no official episode or season 2, I should certainly say. But episode 3 here, man, continues the pace. Listen, I really enjoyed the first 2 episodes. If anything, I had maybe some nitpicks with episode number 2. And when it comes to episode number 3, I've got 1 or 2 nitpicks with this, but definitely not enough to take me out of this episode. I mean, are you kidding me? The confrontation finally between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader, something that we definitely been waiting for around 2 here, is definitely here in this episode, man. And it gave me, well, I will say this felt like a tease of maybe another encounter that's certainly going to come. I do wonder if they're going to have one more confrontation with each other at the end of this series, or if this is the only sort of battle interaction that we certainly might see. I am really intrigued to kind of see where the storyline goes in regards to this, but this was definitely a fantastic appetizer to either another battle later in this season, or certainly to a New Hope's battle that we definitely see them confront each other once again. But I wasn't sure how they were going to pull this off, but I feel like for me, they did a fantastic job of just drawing the emotions out of me when it comes to just the confrontation and the buildup to Obi-Wan and Vader. Like, just beginning off this episode with great audio and callbacks to some dialogue that not only we saw in the previous episode, but also from the prequels as well. I love getting the opportunity to see Obi-Wan Kenobi again trying to reach out to Qui-Gon. I think this is like the 2nd or 3rd time that he's definitely asked for his master's help or has tried to communicate with him. And I am kind of curious how many more times he tries to certainly reach out to Qui-Gon by the end of this series. And I do wonder if the predicament he finds himself in is really going to allow him to finally maybe build that connection with Qui-Gon, and maybe we get ourselves a Liam Neeson cameo in here at some point in time. But the idea of him trying to reach out to Qui-Gon over the past couple episodes, it has felt very much like he has been disconnected from the Force, hasn't really practiced like Yoda and them was certainly asking him to. So it definitely feels like it's a struggle for him to reach out to Qui-Gon. But the fact that he's trying to reach out to Qui-Gon in the first place just really shows the predicament that he's in, and not really sure how to handle the situation, realizing he's going to come face to face with Anakin Skywalker soon enough. And I don't know if Obi-Wan has any answers whatsoever. I mean, he definitely feels like, just watching him in this series, the fear on Obi-Wan is like palpable. And I got to give Ewan McGregor props and just great directing and great writing in here in regards to really feeling the emotions, the roller coaster of emotions that Obi-Wan is certainly going through in here. So to him trying to think back to what Qui-Gon told him about train the boy, his own failures that he certainly has had to overcome. There's certainly a lot on this guy's mind, and I love the idea of him trying to reach out to his master to maybe get some answers and to certainly get some help along the way. Because I tell you, man, when we get to the very end of this episode and Darth Vader comes onto the scene, I love just the gut punch that the Force delivers to Obi-Wan. I mean, it's like this guy just got hit with a ton of bricks immediately as those emotions and that dread just kind of washed over him. Clearly, that connection with Anakin Skywalker is still there. And I'm pretty sure Skywalker's given off an incredible presence to anybody around him that can certainly, that can really tap into it, especially based off of their connection. The idea of seeing Obi-Wan, just as they're about to escape, just get hit by the Force with what was certainly coming his way, and just to see his anticipation to like look out of the window and stuff. I mean, this is the first glimpse that these two have certainly had of each other over the past 10 years. And there's certainly got to be some level of curiosity in Obi-Wan's mind to see what does Anakin look like now after everything that we've been through. And he's a completely different character at this point for Kenobi. And you can definitely see the levels of intimidation that we see here in this episode, man. I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, the fact alone that we get the opportunity to see an Obi-Wan Kenobi who was probably at his prime in, say, episode 2 to episode 3, all during the Clone Wars and things like that, to now see this man running, like running away from Vader on several different occasions, maybe to get his mind and his thoughts together, maybe to kind of come up with a little bit of a plan. But regardless, the fact that he's running, you clearly see just how much of a changed man he is since the last time that we saw. And even Vader winds up calling him out. You've gotten old man, right? Like your skills aren't what they certainly used to be. And I also got to give them props in regards to just the lightsaber battle that we had in here. This is certainly no Revenge of the Sith, right? Like, these guys are not in their youths anymore. They definitely have all been worn out and been through their own struggles and whatever the case may be. So you do get the opportunity to see the progression from Revenge of the Sith to this particular battle. And even when they're like, I was going to say no motion whatsoever, no maneuverability, it feels like, by the time we get to sort of say A New Hope. The progression is certainly there, or the regression, I should certainly say, is there. So whoever put the lightsaber battle together in here, I thought did a really good job of allowing them to still twirl a little bit, but no crazy backflips or anything like that. They really are sort of where they should certainly be based off of the experiences that they've had in their lives so far. But I thought it was incredible to kind of see just Vader come onto the scene. I mean, you want to talk about terrifying, giving no Fs whatsoever. I mean, the fact that he literally comes into town and starts handling some of the civilians and stuff, this to me felt very much like a ploy for Vader to get Obi-Wan to come out. This has been the motif of the Inquisitors the entire time. Patience, right? Because the Jedi will eventually allow themselves to be found, right? Always having to come to the aid of somebody. So I got to assume that that was certainly the plan of Vader this whole time, from strangling a man, from the quick neck break that we wind up getting. I mean, my favorite scene, and I kid you not, was him literally dragging somebody behind him on the ground in the town that he was in. I mean, just some brutal stuff, just unforgiving. And this is the Vader that I was certainly hoping for. The same Vader that was chopping dudes down in Rogue One. This is definitely him. And the fact that he also is probably bearing a lot of anger and resentment towards Obi-Wan. I mean, the quick head movements to try and locate him, sort of thing. I mean, I was nervous for Obi-Wan watching this particular episode, honestly. And then the hunt begins really at this particular point in time, as we get to see just the methodical pacing of Vader, like we ripped him out of a horror movie, it feels like, right? Like the next Jason Voorhees. All of a sudden, no matter where Obi-Wan Kenobi goes, Vader is right around the corner with that lightsaber, going ahead and getting ready to strike him down. And he had some great dialogue in here. The idea that he hits Obi-Wan Kenobi back with the line, "I am what you made me." This guy's been thinking about you forever, Kenobi. I mean, you want to talk about being fueled by hate and the dark side. That's Vader 100% in this. I mean, so much to the point to where it feels like he's just playing with his food, right? Like, I'm sure Vader knows exactly what he's doing. And trust me, there's a part of me that's a little frustrated in the sense of, if you really want to kill Obi-Wan and get what you want, why can't you just snap his neck like you did the civilian, right? But I'm sure there's probably a piece of joy, if Anakin Skywalker can feel that anymore, to being able to literally drag Obi-Wan Kenobi over the coals, over the fire, allowing him to experience the same pain and torment that he went to. I mean, this is playing with your food and torture, certainly at its finest. And I understand every particular motive that Vader has in regards to doing this with Obi-Wan, but it was just brutal, man. And the fact, look, he lets him get away, and that's cool with me. Again, I think this is very much Vader definitely understanding we're certainly going to meet again. This is definitely not over. You had a taste of my power. You see how and much animosity I have certainly built up to you. This is definitely not over. So I absolutely loved it, man. I mean, you want to come talk about coming out of the gates, leaving an impression on Obi-Wan Kenobi to see exactly how far his failure has taken Vader. It was incredible to certainly see on screen, and I cannot wait. I hope we do have ourselves another confrontation. I hope it's more dialogue next time, because if anything, this was just all emotion, all vibe. And again, Ewan McGregor did a fantastic job in regards to expressing his fear. I will say this too. Quick shout out to James Earl Jones, who in fact does come back here to voice Darth Vader. I was kind of curious if they would take any of maybe Hayden Christensen's voice and maybe double it over James Earl Jones, like maybe combine them in some way. But it feels very much like they're using Hayden Christensen. I'm assuming he's in the costume himself. I mean, the difference in height and stature between Vader and Obi-Wan in here is unbelievable. And I even love getting an opportunity to see Hayden Christensen in his old Jedi garb, as I believe when Obi-Wan is on the planet with Leia, I do believe he has a vision or believes he sees Anakin sort of in the distance. So Hayden Christensen certainly got a little bit of face time. But for me, while it's great to have Hayden back, to know that maybe he's in the suit, even in some of the prosthetics that we see, and while it is great to see James Earl Jones, there is still like some connective tissues to getting to that James Earl Jones voice that I always like to see. Like it kind of even startled me a little bit in like episode 3 when he's fully formed and put together, and the first voice that we hear out of him is James Earl Jones. There's always a part of me that always feels like, can it sound something like Hayden Christensen a little bit? I just feel like in the modern era that we're in these days, audio has probably come a long way where you can maybe blend the two a little bit, but they've already established James Earl Jones very much as the voice of Vader. So why change that? I am kind of curious if people felt some type of way about that also. Because look, we were really happy to have Hayden Christensen back. And granted, we do have 3 more episodes left. So maybe we see more of him, right? Maybe flashbacks, maybe him in his regular mode. But there is a part of me that knowing that he was going to be Vader in here, that he left a little bit more of an imprint on that particular character, if you know what I mean. So other than that, though, I loved every bit of Vader and Obi-Wan in here. And I also really appreciated the time between Obi-Wan and Leia in here also. I know some people are probably annoyed by Leia, but that's really what little kids are supposed to be. Little kids are supposed to be pretty annoying, especially just with her headstrong attitude that she certainly has. We know who she winds up becoming when she becomes, as played by Carrie Fisher. And this honestly feels very much like that child version of an adult Princess Leia. So I'm completely on board with it. But one of the moments that I really enjoyed in here was the conversation that he wound up having with Leia about her mom and dad. He's trying to tell the stormtroopers a story, and he looks at her and says, well, she just reminds me a lot of her mom, when I look at her. And Leia definitely picked up on something along those lines, wondering if he not only knew her mother, but also her father's type of thing. And I appreciate Obi-Wan still doing his best to definitely keep it a secret, or at least when it comes to who her father certainly is. I mean, understanding that her and her mom have definitely interacted with one another. For me, it kind of makes me feel for the Leia character once again. While she loves being with Bail and the Organas and things like that, I'm sure she loves Alderaan. The fact that she gets picked on, that her family feels some type of way about her not being a real Organa also at the end of the day, it makes me be able to understand how she feels, and that I don't want to say resentment, but that curiosity is certainly know where you came from, who your parents definitely were. Like for me, growing up, I lost my father at a very young age, and even though I had my mom there beside me, I barely remember very much of my dad. I feel very much like Obi-Wan in the sense of, I remember glimpses like of his hands, of his stature type of thing, right? But nothing really sort of concrete. And there's always been a part of me that's always wanted to learn certainly a lot more about my dad. And so this feels very much like Leia in the sense of wanting to know where she comes from, considering that there are certainly some people that don't appreciate her being a part of their family at this particular point. But you just realize, like, just seeing Obi-Wan wanting to probably tell Leia just all the pain that probably really comes with that story, and why that's probably a tale for another day when it comes to Princess Leia, maybe waiting for her to get a little bit older before it gets to that particular point, and even getting some glimpses into Obi-Wan's past. Not only talking about his family, we don't really see the Jedi talk very much about his family, but he even mentions he remembers having a brother. Now that's something I'm really fascinated in. Like, granted, I don't think we're going to get a spin-off of Obi-Wan Kenobi's brother, but if there's a novel or something that wants to come out in some sort of medium that maybe explains that story a little bit more, I am kind of curious if Ben was force sensitive. Was his brother force sensitive, or not really, or did he become force sensitive later in his age? Again, I think the idea of the Jedi being pulled away from their family at such a young age definitely makes this revelation a little bit from Obi-Wan even that much more fascinating to me, to be perfectly honest with you. But if I did have any cons in this week's episode, a couple things, really, maybe two things. The drive to the port was incredibly frustrating for me. When we get the opportunity to see, was his name Freck, I believe, pick up Obi-Wan and Leia on the planet that they took the ship to. Freck winds up picking them up, trying to take them into town, and you realize he's very much associated with the Empire. He's a very big believer in the Empire and what they do. And when they pick up the troopers, immediately I thought to myself, "Oh, this is over. This is over. They've been busted," right? But the troopers come in and they're like oblivious to the fact that they literally have these two people that they're searching for right in front of them. I mean, they say specifically that they're moving us because we're looking for a Jedi. And even at the end, he says, "Don't worry, we're gonna find them like we always do." So you're telling me you don't know what your Jedi looks like, but you're looking for Jedi? I mean, listen, everybody on Dio got the fucking memo, right? Like, everybody got a picture of Obi-Wan wanted. I mean, we literally had a John Wick experience where, like, bounty hunters all around Dio were trying to find this guy. And you're trying to tell me that a stormtrooper does not have access to the same image and documents? Like, if you're telling stormtroopers who to look for, shouldn't they have an idea what they look like? I mean, stupid. I mean, look, if you want to say maybe they haven't gotten their assignment yet and they had to wait to get to their post, maybe. But based off of the fact that everybody on Dio knows who Obi-Wan Kenobi is and what he looks like, and Vader's been looking for this dude for 10 years, you would think his most wanted and fugitive poster would be plastered on every, like, hallway of an Imperial ship or port at some place. If you see this guy, turn him into Lord Vader. But I guess not. Empire slipping, man. Empire slipping. So to me, that whole ride felt very much like forced tension, just as a viewer, to get us like, oh my God, what's going to happen? But to me, it fell by the wayside, because I'm like, they should know who these people are, and unfortunately they don't. And then my second con, my con to this episode, and again, this one might be a little bit of a nitpick. The very end of this episode, when Leia is captured, I'm under the impression that there's only one path from this safe house, to the ship that they're in. And so we get, I don't even remember what the lady's name was that was trying to help Leia. Was it Tula, or whatever her name was? Tala? I can't remember. But she takes Leia down this path to go to the airport or go to the ship. And then she turns back around to leave and tells Leia, keep going. And during this time, Reva gets to the same entry point inside of the building to go from it looked like one path from the safe house to the piloting area. She gets to the front of it and she goes through the tunnel. So yet Tula manages to somehow get out of the tunnel and to Obi-Wan to look after him. And yet Reva also makes it to the ship before Leia gets down there. It's just, I'm confused. I'm a little bit confused. It kind of threw me off a little bit. You would think that they would bump into each other at some point in time, and we don't get any of that, unfortunately. So sometimes I do feel like there are maybe hiccups in the plot, in the story, in regards to clearly paying attention for whoever the writer was. I believe that's Joby Harold in here. So yeah, little nitpicks, not enough to definitely take me out of the episode, but definitely something to leave me with questions in regards to why weren't these plot holes or these ideas tried kind of figured out and thought well out before filming type of thing. So again, maybe that's just a nitpick on my part. Maybe it didn't bother you guys, but those were really just the two cons that I wind up having in here. But I will say this, a couple other characters we got to talk about very briefly. We've got Reva, the third sister, in here. I continue to be impressed by Moses Ingram. I truly do. I'm impressed, and clearly so is Vader. The fact that Vader's quite impressed with her work, getting the opportunity to meet him, it is holographic, but still, that's got to be an honor for Reva, saying that he's keeping an eye on her, sort of thing. Even offers her the position of the next Grand Inquisitor if this mission is successful. I'm still up in the air in regards to what's going on with the Grand Inquisitor. Like, did they really kill this man off? Did they really like just go and push back against all canon that we've seen so far from Star Wars Rebels and just kill this man off, or is he like recovering and he's gonna come back? Like, there's a part of me that doesn't think that Reva makes it out of this series alive, to the point to where, like, I think something, the mission fails, Obi-Wan escapes, the Empire doesn't succeed, and I do wonder if a lot of that blame from Vader maybe goes to Reva, and she's killed by the end of this, and then the Grand Inquisitor reveals to be completely okay and he's back, or a new Grand Inquisitor steps in the place and maybe he's more of the comic or the cartoon accurate Star Wars Rebels guy. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out, but clearly Vader's impressed enough to offer up the Grand Inquisitor job here to Reva, and I love it. The animosity and the clashing between the two, the Inquisitors. I love it. Right? It's always a fight for power. There's a reason why there's always just two, the Master and the Apprentice. The idea of being able to get a group of Inquisitors together, if they don't kill each other, their greed and their need for power certainly will at some particular point in time. So I love the idea that the fifth brother is just not impressed, not happy with how she's throwing around orders and talking to him, considering that he personally feels he's certainly next in charge. But when you got somebody like Vader lifting up Reva, third sister, yeah, you might want to kind of pay attention a little bit. And Reva's taking that opportunity, handing out orders, a ton of confidence, and her commitment continues to be overwhelming. And trust me, it is not just the need for power and recognition of Darth Vader. While that definitely plays a big part in it, I do think, again, there is a lot of animosity, because I am making the connection of Reva being one of the younglings from the Jedi Temple that we saw in the very beginning of episode 1 escaping. And I do think that she maybe has some animosity and turmoil towards the Jedi and the Council. And I think that's what certainly drives her. I've heard some people complain that feels like she's very much a one-note character. And I think there's a lot more to her. And I do think that they are revealing it very slowly. Like when she winds up finding the safe house, the path, as they certainly call it, which to me kind of feels like a Star Wars universe underground railroad sort of thing, right? Where you hide Jedi or anybody else that needs to sort of be smuggled out. I think it's a really cool concept to have connected safe houses around the galaxy to certainly get where you need to get. And the fact that several Jedi have in fact survived, or at least been through those halls before, for me was just really fantastic to kind of hear, especially the reference to Quinlan. I believe that's Quinlan Voss, if I'm not mistaken. So it's pretty cool to see that he was alive at some point in time, saving younglings. Whether or not he certainly is still, I'm not quite sure. I do believe him and Asajj Ventress um, do have a novel together. So there might be more story to Quinlan Voss to certainly be told book wise. So if you guys are interested, again, I believe it's called Dark Disciple, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check this real quick, because we are live today. Let me see if I can Quinlan Voss. Yeah, Dark Disciple. It's a adventure between him and Asajj Ventress. It is a canon novel, so it does in fact fit into the timeline. So there is a place in the novels if you want to read a little bit more about Quinlan. But I appreciate them really making those connective tissues here for the prequels and the novels in this particular moment. But some really great stuff, man. I'm trying to go through. Some of the things, yeah, because she winds up locating the safe house and notices the Jedi symbol on the wall and kind of seems to fall back kind of in her mind, thinking about some memories and things like that. The fact that she references, he says, I believe the fifth brother says, I hope you get what you deserve. And she says, I hope so. And I think that's maybe revenge against the Jedi if it's handed to her. So we'll see what happens though, man. But really impressive stuff from Vader. Hella impressed me. Ewan McGregor's role once again as Obi-Wan Kenobi continues to floor me just to kind of see the progression of this man over the past 10 years. So great stuff there. We even got the opportunity to see Mustafar once again, Vader's castle, like his own hideout and things like that. I mean, incredible stuff that we wind up getting. Aside from my cons, for the most part, I love what we wind up getting here. And look, I think this show is certainly 3 for 3. I think this episode, if I had to pick like a weakest episode so far out of the three, probably maybe number 2 for me. But again, that's not taking anything away from it because I certainly was definitely a big fan. But I definitely want to know some of your guys' thoughts for this episode. I believe we got Marcelino Vasquez in the house with us today. Let's see what you're saying, and we'll jump off with some of your comments. You said the fight between Obi-Wan and Vader in A New Hope doesn't hold up choreographic wise since the 70s didn't have the technology back then as the film industry does now. I mean, if you're looking from a technical aspect, I mean, yeah, lightsaber wise is certainly not going to be the same. But um you also say people have called the original fight between Obi-Wan and Vader basically two old men hitting each other with sticks is basically a precursor to the okay, well, I'm not going to go into politics here in regards to those two, but I will say this, you know, for me this felt like the progression to that fight, because this fight that we see in here clearly is not the same fight from Revenge of the Sith. 10 years has definitely taken its toll. Clearly Obi-Wan Kenobi has dealt with grief and failure and hasn't necessarily maybe kept up with his training the way that he should, especially with him out in isolation. Vader, on the other hand, clearly with him being more robot than human, as we saw very much in the beginning of this episode, the great sort of montage of the dialogue and Obi-Wan in deep thought while we're seeing Darth Vader put together, just beautifully done in regards to direction. I mean, Deborah Chow is really killing this season so far. I've been really impressed with how she's handled certain particular scenes, shot selection. I mean, it's all there. And so when you see the idea of Vader not being, you know, being more machine than man, I'm sure a lot of his maneuverability probably isn't where it certainly used to be. And so the fact that we get the opportunity to see how much they have regressed in their lightsaber battles in the past 10 years, for me at least, lets me know, okay, when I go back to A New Hope, that just makes so much more sense as we can see their regression when it comes to just their physical attributes and what they can do fighting style wise. So yeah, really, really impressed. I really enjoyed that aspect. You said a problem I have with the show is that they have heavily implied the Grand Inquisitor is dead, which makes me worried that they are contradicting Star Wars Rebels. They might reveal that the Grand Inquisitor is still alive, but for now they're treating it as it doesn't affect canon when it does. You know, I will say this: you are right in that sense when they say they make it feel like it doesn't affect canon when it certainly does. It definitely does, especially after the groundwork that Dave Filoni has done when it comes to Star Wars Rebels. And so I'm still going to give it time. I don't mind the decision now because I don't know the end result. But if the end result at the end of the season, Homeboy is still dead, then maybe, you know, there is a world out there where we have some thought somebody like, say, a Darth Maul was dead, literally cut in half. It took him years to get back, but he certainly was there. Is there a possibility that there's another story that Filoni has of bringing back the Grand Inquisitor at some point in time? Probably, but we'll see how this season turns out. I'm going to hold my judgment for the Grand Inquisitor until after the season. I hope he's certainly still alive, but let's see where the story definitely takes us. Because yes, I think if anything, that's probably a big concern in regards to anything. You see, when I first saw the trailer to Obi-Wan, at first I thought Reva was Trilla from Jedi Jedi Order. Yeah, I thought she was too as well, but that's certainly not the case. Yeah, guys. Overall, man, stellar episode. I'm really hoping for a Qui-Gon appearance at some point in time. I'm hoping these pleas to his master at some point certainly get answered. Maybe Obi-Wan's got to be at his absolute lowest in order to kind of get there. I loved his line that he said, "He's coming, master." And when he said that, I said, yeah, for that ass. He's coming for you, Obi-Wan. And he did not play around. I mean, God, the dragging him over the fire and coals was just, it was so satisfying in a weird way to kind of see Vader kind of get some of his revenge and play with his food, if you will, play with his toys. But yeah, man, I can't wait to see another confrontation between those two. And I will say this, going back to the Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon stuff, when they're at the safe house, not Vader, Obi-Wan does reference a quote that Quinlan Vos put on the wall or carved into the wall saying, "Only when the eyes are closed can you truly see." And then Leia says, "See what?" And Obi-Wan finishes, "The way." I do wonder if this is a message to any Jedi or maybe from Quinlan, just the idea of becoming one with the Force or being able to truly tap into the Force. Like, I do wonder if this one line alone will help Qui-Gon or help Obi-Wan maybe try a little bit harder, maybe focus a little bit more in trying to get Qui-Gon, and maybe the first step that he certainly needs to finding his way to becoming one with the Force. I do wonder if that line has anything to certainly do with it. But yeah, man, I'm absolutely loving what we're seeing so far. But listen, at the end of the day, guys, these are just simply my A+ opinions. I definitely want to know yours. What did you guys think of Obi-Wan Kenobi Part 3? Let your thoughts be known in the live chat or the comment section box below. And if there's any character details I missed, storyline moments, Easter eggs, name drops that you guys want to go ahead and further continue to talk about, let your thoughts be known in the live chat. And if anything, we definitely will go ahead and get to your comments and questions throughout the week until next week's episode. But until then, guys, as always, do me a big favor. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. May the Force be with you. And we'll see you guys next Thursday. Take care, guys. Bye.